Greetings, class. My name is Jovan Burton, and my action research project is on successful band programs in the urban, suburban, and rural setting. So, in my introduction, I want to start with this. As a band director, I am always trying to find a way for my students in the band program to be successful. In education, it can be assumed that the learning setting that students are in may or may not affect the way they what they experience. In a public school band, what is considered to be successful may vary from one situation to the next. So, starting here in my project, the title is called Successful Band Programs. So, the first thing, just kind of discussing is what is success and what we assume to be successful. So, definitely in teaching, I know that for core teachers, everything's data driven and high test scores, high student um, ratings indicate that there's some great teaching happening. In my world, it's literally um, you standing in front of the band, and even the untrained ear. What I mean by the untrained ear, someone who's not a band director can begin to assume that there is or there is not good teaching going on, which is kind of, a good and bad thing because in a struggling situation, one can assume that teaching isn't happening, but there's some factors that contribute to that. I have discovered that success in a public school band setting is determined by the director, students, parents, and the school itself. One of the most unfortunate things that may come from the idea of success in the world of instrumental music education is the comparison of band programs, especially the differences in the urban, suburban, and rural learning settings. So I consider myself to be an urban teacher, and what I discovered is when I end up in a situation where I end up playing in the same environment as a school from a suburban setting, um, when they're able to be as successful rating wise as that program. Does it mean I didn't teach well? No. Does it mean that my colleague from a rural county didn't teach well? No. Just different parameters. So, I think that one of the most important things is discovering at the end of the day was success. Uh, what we as educators determine as success is important to the philosophy of teaching our students and could be the difference in eliminating social lines and allowing students to discover success in their own learning situations. So, from previous experience as a teacher, when I take my students to perform at the University of Georgia at JanFest and MidFest, some of my students coming from an urban setting might feel inferior about performing with a student that may come from a suburban setting. I know also kids that come from a rural county might feel the same way. And it's nice. It's nice to see them go through the experience of performing with those students that they don't know from various parts of Georgia, because they can see at the end of the day that learning is learning and music is music, and they're actually a lot better than they were, which is encouraging for them to learn more. I decided to put this statistical demographic graph together to kind of begin to zero in on what leads to success and how do we begin to unpack and break down the idea. So here I have income, education, the percentage of people who actually receive a bachelor's degree or higher, home value, and poverty. Um, and I got this data for the U.S. Census Bureau, um, which is a pretty accurate resource to use. And just to briefly home in, if we notice here, it would seem like home value is a little higher in the urban setting, but keeping in mind downtown setting, condo living, and I think this is a big factor as a band director because it is what the average person is paying to the school tax um, in the area that you work in. And the more expensive the homes, the more taxes that are paid, the more money that the school has, and specifically for a band program, the more that people are paying taxes at the end of the day, it can be safely assumed that the more that money being poured in, such as splash or something like that, where buying instruments, buying music becomes a bit more accessible. versus another setting that, like a rural setting, where you have almost half compared to the urban setting, 80% or so, where that means that not a lot of money is being pumped into it. Poverty levels are higher in the urban and rural setting, which means that students in your program don't have financial access to things. And looking at the urban and suburban income ratio, yeah, the home value is high in the urban setting, but earning almost 20,000 less, about 18,000 less than students' parents in the suburban setting. Makes a big difference of what parents can pour into a program for it to be successful at the end of the day. Now, what does all this mean? Access and opportunity is very different. So what students can assess, what you can assess as a director or as a teacher, is vastly, vastly different. Should we expect the same things from every program? My opinion would be no, based upon the research, mainly because there are different challenges and success, and I won't say success. There are different challenges and pros, so pros and cons in each situation. And what is the best outlook for students? What do we want them to achieve? What's realistic for them so they feel proud about what they do. And the one thing I think we take pride in as band directors is the level of influence we have in motivating them in life. So in this quick little chart here to the right where it says ratings, what I'm referring to is our Georgia Music Educators Association large group performance evaluations. What some directors would deem to be successful is your rating per year. What did you receive at a festival? Superior rating being the highest rating that you can earn. Excellent and good being the second best. And we see here that based upon the after going through every high school and middle school in each of the settings, areas I looked in a rural county, urban setting, and suburban setting, it would somewhat be expected that the suburban setting scores that better. The way scheduling is put together, how schools are structured, how master schedules are set, and the level of resources that are accessible. Now, it does not mean that scoring a excellent and a good isn't a positive thing. We would like to believe that, oh, we score superior, so that means that we're the best. Not necessarily true, because what it's probably going to take for the rural director or the urban director to achieve some good things might be a different task. And for me, achieving, and the other directors that I interviewed would say that even obtaining those ratings, especially if they're playing next to a suburban school, is a big level of success. So this is another example of what could be successful in your situation. So based on the research, here's the plan. Pedagogy plus planning equals success. And these two things, great teaching, understanding content, how to motivate children, plus planning very well. What's best for your students? What music should we play? Or what great strategies should I use? Will always lead to students being successful. And this was concurred by the other three directors that these are the two most important two things that any band director should refer to if you want to be successful in your situation. The research questions. Here are some questions that I used in my interviews. Most importantly, questions that are referred to at the end of the day that I wanted to focus on. Is there such a thing as equality for band programs in each of the learning settings? It will become apparent by opinion, maybe not, because even within the settings, there are some vast differences as far as what programs can do, which to certain people can affect the level of success for a program, or what we deem to be successful. If you're looking for every program to be the same, which is the second question, should we expect the same from every program? It's kind of hard to do that when each of the situations are vastly different, which drives to the next question: what is important for a successful program? Goes back to my previous slide of great pedagogy and great planning. But most importantly, what is a successful band program? For me and the directors that I interviewed, even some of the parents that I watched engage in the rehearsals that I sat in, are the students being successful at what they're doing? So I wanted to go ahead and define, after discussing with the three directors of their opinion of success and adding my own. This is what we all came up with: success for students in a band program according to the 3 directors that participated in the survey should reflect the realistic challenges and positives of the job. The students and their learning experiences should always be at the forefront of planning. So we all agree this was the first step in ensuring that what's best for them in lieu of the challenges is the first step to being successful. You're not going to allow the challenges to stop you from doing something with your students. The directors agree that success will vary from situation to situation, but what is important is that the students are able to understand and facilitate the instrument. So the basic thing that each director kept saying is that, can the students play their instrument? And if the students are playing the instrument and playing it very well, that is deemed as a successful program. As long as students are learning and they're having a great experience, it is a successful band program. And going back to the first 2 previous bullets here, that students are learning and having a great time, we all agree that that is a successful band program. Looking at the literature review, these are 2 main and large sources that drove my action research project. Alfred Watkins and the Lasseter High School Band. Very successful band program in Cobb County, very nationally known. Sue Samuels did a dissertation on the structure of his program, he really laid out a lot of things. And as the directors and I were kind of discussing success, I constantly refer back to the things they were saying in comparison to what Alfred Watkins explained, what he deemed as great steps for being successful, and some things match. And so that was a great resource for me. And the last one, Habits of a Successful Band Director. Great resource to read, especially for a newer director. If someone's a newer director, really broke down, structure, and how to style your program to lead to success. So here's a look at the methods for research. I used the Lewin's method design in the Mills reading that book that we have. This approach allowed me to use several stages of research and evaluation during the process. And that was important to me just in case I ran into a situation where I was trying to follow steps and I needed to take a different avenue. I used 3 stages. Interviews with 3 directors. So what I did was I found a band director in each of those settings and actually visited school during the rehearsal to not only speak to the director about some of the research questions that I had, but I wanted to see from my own eyes how a rehearsal ran, how parents and students, interacted with each other, with the director, and were those things common amongst the groups. I will say yes, I did observe in across 3 settings that there were some great similarities in how rehearsals were structured, the expectation of the students, and it was very common, which those expectations and those bars being set lead to a successful program at the end of the day. And resources that I used were, as mentioned, the Sue Samuels dissertation, articles, and books. Very briefly, research took place at a high school in a urban, suburban, and rural settings. As I mentioned before, I visit 3 of those settings, focused on the ones that I visited, 9th through 12th grade high school programs. Programs were selected were considered successful, so I had to review and vet what awards these programs were winning, the festival ratings, and then the longevity of their directors to get a great idea of kind of trying to put each of the programs in the same category. The rationale for my project is I wanted to dive a little deeper into the commonalities of a successful band program, because later in my doctoral program, I want to get into the successes and the failures of each of the situations. One size does not fit all, but I wanted to kind of begin to focus on, here are some ways to be successful in this situation. Our research project spanned over a timeline of about 4 weeks. I wanted to make sure that I visited groups after large group performance evaluation, LGPE, to use those festival ratings as a guiding point to how I selected each of those groups. Here are my references, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my action research project. I hope that was very helpful, and I look forward to diving a little deeper into my research on this particular topic.